Hello, business building warrior. Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I'm your host today, Jim Cockrum, but I'm going to bring on two of the other frequent hosts, Brian and Robin Joy Olson, who do such a great job as coaching leaders on our team, content creators. You've seen them on stage at our events, possibly. They've built a beautiful business using the strategies taught in the Proven Amazon course, as have all the leaders in our community. That's where our hundreds of podcast guests come from as well. Proven Amazon course students. But today we're going to dive into a project that Brian and Robin Joy were working on for several months. And it is the first ever, the world's first, to our knowledge, no one else has done this, complete 360 walkthrough, 360-degree walkthrough of the tool you hear us talk about all the time around here called Keepa. Now, if you're not familiar with Keepa and what it is and what it does, podcast episode 369 of this same show covers it. You can go back and listen to our Keepa episode. There's details on what Keepa is as well on their website. You can go to silentjim.com/KEEPA to hear more details. Now, you may already know, but bear with me for about 1 minute as I explain what Keepa is for those who don't know. Keepa has scraped Amazon's database on all the 1.3 billion ASINs, which would take us 32 years to count. That's a lot of ASINs. They've scraped the data on all of them for a very long period of time since the ASINs were added to the catalog, which gives us a nice timeline view of each product listing on Amazon. Amazon itself doesn't provide this data. No other tool in the market provides this data, just Keepa. And they've scraped this data, and you can search the database for opportunities in unique and creative ways. We've identified dozens of ways. And today, what we're going to introduce is the first tool ever that gives you a complete walkthrough. If you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced in your use of Keepa, it's a complete walkthrough of all the strategies that we've uncovered and identified for Amazon sellers who are looking to use their investment capital in the most efficient way possible to find the greatest opportunity of turning the greatest possible profit. That's what we use Keepa as a decision-making tool for buying the right inventory. And today we're introducing a new course that can only be found at silentjim.com/360. 3 digits, 360, 360. silentjim.com/360. That's Brian and Robin Joy's new course. Now, we already do inside the Proven Amazon course have some basic Keepa training. We have some strategies in there as well. But what we don't have is a complete tour walkthrough of all the different ways that we've discovered to use Keepa as a product research tool. As you'll hear described on today's episode, Brian and Robin Joy have spent a lot of time even talking about some of the other add-on tools that can be used in conjunction with Keepa to speed up what they call that last mile of sourcing, to go from a list of 500 potential winning ASINs as quickly as possible down to the 5 or 6 that you're going to go buy right now and where you're going to buy them. So there's a lot in this tool. You need to go to that website and see what all we've got included. silentjim.com/360 is the website, but we're going to spend some time today talking about some very specific strategies. In many cases, strategies that are only taught in our community. It's examples that you've heard other students of ours on this podcast share how they're using Keepa, different ways they're using it. So if you ever hear anybody, here's a litmus test. If you've ever said this yourself, if you've ever heard anybody say, yeah, I know how to use Keepa. Yeah, I use it all the time. I know how it works. They're not making an accurate statement because there's always more to learn. There's always new ways to combine and to scrape the data and to massage it and to mine the data in creative ways. It gives you the quickest possible path to finding great test-worthy products that you can sell on Amazon. This is a strategy where we start all of our new sellers. If you're new around here, you should know that we love dozens of different ways to make money on Amazon. But if you're new, we've identified, as you'll hear us discuss on today's show, we've identified this model using Keepa, finding what we call replens or underserved inventory, the underserved shelf space, I should say, at Amazon's warehouses. That's what we help you find, that underserved shelf space where you can go find easily sourced items and send them in. This is the lowest hanging fruit opportunity. We call it the lowest risk, lowest investment required, lowest learning curve, highest odds of success business model in all of e-commerce. And the tool you need to understand to be able to do it is the tool we're going to talk about on today's show called Keepa. And we're proud to have the first ever complete tutorial from start to finish on all the different tools and strategies that go into making Keepa such a powerful tool. So when you log in, what do the menus do? What do the different features do? How do I use it? And we're going to be adding more modules all the time as well. So Keepa 360. Go to silentjimdotcom/360 to see it. Let's get Brian and Robin Joy on the line right now. We're going to discuss some of the successes that we've seen, some of the strategies that are being used, and who this course is for. Thanks for listening. Let's jump over and get them on the line right now. So Brian, Robin, Joy, always good to spend some time with you. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
Good to see you.
Always a pleasure to be here and spend some time with you.
Yeah, maybe you should be welcoming me, actually. You guys host as much as I do. I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of...
Silent Sales Machine Radio.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm excited to do this today because you guys have been working hard on a new project. And I mentioned it in the intro a little bit, but let's dive in. Like, why did you guys create this? Who's it for? Let's dive in.
Well, just to give a little bit of backstory, I think we teased everyone about this time last year where we went away to the mountains and we're like, we're making Keepa content.
That's right.
And we did.
And we did, yes. And then we got sidetracked on a number of other things. And so we finally, actually, it was going to be like in Q1 this year. And then finally Q2, it has to get done in Q2. And it did. It finally got done in Q2. So we're pretty stoked about it. But basically, this is like we've done previous courses around Keepa. And the Keepa that I remember as a coaching student, when I was first learning how to understand Keepa, I thought, this is really powerful. Like, I need to figure out a way to be able to use this to help me source products. And I fooled around with it for quite some time before I stumbled onto something that would really change the game for me, which is what I called retail recon. And this was just a way for me to observe my competitors and find out what kinds of things they were selling.
Yeah, storefront stalking, some call it, right?
Yes, yeah. This though, when I came across the small tweak, it felt like I was pouring gasoline on that particular strategy, which was to take 50 different stores at one time and evaluate all of their products in Keepa. For me, this was a game changer. We called it bulk retail recon because now I can look at tens of thousands of products that other sellers are likely successful with, and I can just carve out the ones that are going to be that meet my criteria, right? Because we all have different parts, different ways of approaching the business. We have different backgrounds. Like we know someone who, like they used to build houses. They really know about all the small pieces of hardware that are involved in finishing out a house. Stuff I don't know about, but that's kind of where they specialize. So that's their superpower, if you will. So they can take these strategies that we've been talking about before and really point it in the direction of their area of expertise. So that was kind of the first, that was the first iteration of Keepa. And it was very, very targeted. I mean, it's got great application. And since we released that, we've learned of many, many seven-figure sellers who that is their only strategy. And so I think that it's that powerful. You can use it to build a phenomenal seven-figure business.
Sure.
So the follow-up to that was kind of a more targeted strategy, right? Like, it was 9 different strategies. So how do we find very specific types of listings? And we created 9 new sort of targeted searches that people can take and customize for their own businesses, like I was talking about, if you happen to specialize in hardware or whatever. So in all those 10 ways of using Keepa to source, they're great. Like, we love it. Most everyone we work with, they love it too. But to be clear, it's only a very, very small part of what Keepa does. And so Robin has been coaching now for a couple of years. She started about a year after I did in the coaching space. And she's like, we really need to, in this update, tackle this in a way that provides more content for beginners as well. And so Robin kind of focused on putting that content together in this updated course.
Yes, I did. So just to kind of talk about that a little bit, what we needed was people to be able to know how to set that up. I had people that I was working with that didn't know how to use a Chrome extension or how to use that part of it. People who were looking still to, what the different filters on the on-page chart were for. And so we went through those kind of things and just the basics to kind of set a foundation.
Very good. And, something that I want to point out too, I don't know if I mentioned it in the intro or not, because I record that after we're done, but we have become the premier Keepa user community, to my knowledge, in the industry. And we finally got their attention, with thousands and thousands of users. So they're starting to incorporate some of the ideas and strategies that we're suggesting into the tool to make it more intuitive and more useful for us. And you guys have really helped kind of shape some of those ideas, and we've corresponded with them. And so I'm excited that, and I've said it often, and I think you guys are proof of that. Some people think, well, Keepa, I watch a few YouTube videos, now I know how to use it, right? No. We're still learning.
Yes, always.
As seasoned users, this is data that's scraped and can be massaged in so many different ways and mined in so many creative ways to come up with different results and lists and things. And that strikes me as, so what we've done is we've kind of expanded in both directions, is what I'm hearing. We've gone super simple. People are like, okay, I'm intimidated. I see this heart monitor on my screen. What is this Keepa chart, right? We've gone super simple. And we've gone in the other direction too. Like, here's some really advanced, cool things you can do. We're stepping you through it, right? Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Jim. Just to reiterate or top up on what you're talking about with the advancements in Keepa, it seems like nearly every week I log in, there's something new.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, this wasn't here last week.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, I've got a way to impact and filter the data that I hadn't had previously. And a couple of those came directly from you and this community that I've seen in there recently. Like after we did the second Keepa course on the 9 different strategies, someone asked me, like, is there a way to filter out all the hazmat? And there wasn't in Keepa at the time a way to do that. Today there is.
Yeah.
Right.
So people ask, was there a way to filter out meltable items? At the time, there wasn't. Today there is.
Now there is.
And there wasn't a way to see how many times, let's say, Amazon ran out of stock. Today there is.
I love that feature.
Yes.
That is such gold.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And explaining to them what, and they're like, well, we can tell you the percentage of time. I'm like, I don't want to know the percentage. I want to know how many times they ran out, right? And so they added it. And that is gold. Yeah. Like each one of these little nuggets of information that we're dropping can help you filter down to such a powerful list.
Yeah.
I feel compelled, for those who have never heard about Keepa before, we can always send them the podcast episode 369, go listen to it. But the visual I want to create for folks before we proceed a little deeper here is Keepa scrapes Amazon's data, the one, as you always refer to, Brian, the 1.3 billion, the ASINs that would take us 32 years to count. Keepa is scraping those constantly and pulling out nuggets of data that you simply can't get anywhere else. It's data that I doubt Amazon itself even has on those ASINs.
Yep.
But we've got it now. And that gives us such a significant advantage over where we're going to invest our inventory dollars, right? So this is just the next level of us diving a little deeper and staying a little shallower and friendlier for the newbies on Keepa as a tool. And there's a link. You can go to silentjimdotcom/Keepa, Keepa, to see the tool in action. But this is the world's foremost training on the topic, because we're nerding out constantly with this thing in our community, aren't we? All right, so keep going. You've kind of told us who it's for, the gap that it fills, but keep sharing this story on this.
Remind me to come back to the revolutionary approach that you've introduced to us and the rest of the community, and how that has impacted our business, because I think what you're talking about there is really important. But let me finish kind of wrapping this up, what the Keepa course looks like. So we tackle the Keepa extension, which is what you see when you're on an Amazon listing, right? And that extension has multiple tabs and sub-tabs and checkboxes and filters and all kinds of stuff in there. We cover that from A to Z. So like before, we were just using kind of really targeted criteria or strategies for finding ASINs, but now we're covering even how to evaluate an ASIN by using the Keepa extension on an Amazon web page, which is, I mean, we figured we knew a fair amount about that stuff, and we did, but we learned stuff even as we were going through, like,
We still learn.
oh, yeah, I didn't realize that was there, or that is what that meant. And so just going through, they always say, you know, the way to get really good at something is to teach someone else about it. And so we did pick up some things along the way for ourselves as well.
And you guys get such great feedback when you do those trainings, by the way.
Oh,
We've had people say, one of the comments that stands out to me, this was after our last conference and you guys did the pre-workshop. And he said he's been through multiple professional trainings at the corporate, big dollars spent to bring in professional trainers. He said he's never seen anything like what we put together, YouTube put together for that content. He said it was worth so much more than what they'd paid. So we get those kind of comments rolling in constantly. Well done. You guys, it's not said publicly often enough, just how much value you guys contribute to this community and how many people you're helping. So thank you for the excellence of that content. Yeah, for sure.
It is absolutely our pleasure.
Absolutely.
If you can't tell, we have a ball doing this.
We do. Absolutely.
You're in your lane, as they say, for sure.
Yeah.
And people are so kind.
Yeah.
We appreciate those comments. That helps us a lot.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
So we cover everything on the extension, which is great. We never covered anything on the extension before. Then we dive into the actual web page. So you log into Keepa and there's all the different menu options in there. People tend to jump right to the Keepa product finder and it's super powerful. So I'm not surprised, but there are a ton of other options in there, right? There's the Keepa product viewer, there's the category tree, there's the seller lookup, there's the the top seller list. I mean, so much information. So we cover all of that as well. And because of that, just those kind of two things, we've titled this new updated course. It's not updated. It's all new. Keepa 360, because it is kind of a 360-degree view of the tool.
Right. Yep. And no one's done that to my knowledge. I'm shocked. And no one's ever done that. Keepa themselves never did that. They just kind of assumed if they have they have a handful of weaknesses as an organization. If you're listening, we love you guys, but there's a handful of things you're not that great at. You're not real descriptive in what certain features do. You don't have any instructional videos out there. It was originally intended, I know you guys know this, but maybe the listeners don't. Keepa as a tool was originally intended for shoppers to say, hey, if this pair of shoes I'm looking at ever drops below price X, let me know, send me an alert. It was intended to help shoppers find good deals. But sellers quickly realized, oh, wow, there's some data here. It can give me an advantage in picking good inventory. And so I think that's probably 95% of their user base now, I would imagine. But they've never really joined arms. They've never showed up at our events. They've never appeared on a podcast episode with anybody ever. Nobody knows. I always call them a bunch of monks in a cave somewhere with hooked up to servers, genius level monks in a cave somewhere scraping data. Who are these guys? But we're corresponding with them now. But that is a weakness that's been there, is a 360 overview. What's this tool capable of? What are the different menu options? How do I use these different features? So I'm thrilled that we've got this now.
I just wanted to point out that the beginner part of that is for beginners. A lot of people feel like they have to know all about Keepa in order to get a business started with Amazon, and they don't. Right. There are just a few things that can get you started, and you can work into that. You absolutely do not need to be an expert to get started. So we put in what you do need to know, kind of those things to start out. And then we made sections so that you can walk your way through it as opposed to just taking it all at once.
But we haven't mentioned in a minute, Keepa, the Keepa 360 course you guys created is at silentjim.com/360, as in 360-degree view of the room. 360, the 3 digits. silentjim.com/360. All right. Well, what else do you want to tell us about the course? And we got a couple other things to kick around too as well still, but keep it going.
So we cover the extension, we cover the back-end tools, right? And then we start layering some strategies in there. How do you leverage these things to your advantage? So one of those ways is all new bulk retail recon method that we included in this course. So when I did that original one 2 or 3 years ago, things were different back then, right? I used Excel, and it was you needed a special formula to format stuff a certain way. It's gotten way easier now, much simpler ways to get that done, and much easier ways to go gather those competitors that you would like to pull their ASINs into your overall evaluation. But to be clear, the reason you mentioned it earlier, like storefront stalking, I think the term implies some level of negativity because of
it does,
stalking, right?
Yeah. Until you understand what it is you're actually doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we like to take a very clinical approach with this. Like, I don't care who the stores are. I don't even care who their ASINs are. I just dump them all into a bucket, turn some filters on, and then see what the results are. So
it's just a number. We don't know who
it's just a number.
Yeah.
I'm not really, we're not really stalking anyone, but you know, the name has stuck because it's a little, you know,
it's alliterative. Yeah.
Negative nicknames stick longer
Yeah.
than positive takes on the reality of the situation. Yeah, I mean, that's just human nature. You can't help it. It's kind of like feed the beast. And I'm like, how about fuel the machine? No, I like feed the beast better. Like, okay.
So all new update there with that particular approach, way easier to accomplish these days. And then the other thing that is included, and this is kind of more of an appendix in this course, are those 9 strategies that we tackled previously. And the way this whole thing is laid out is very modular. So when we can go in and make updates to maybe 1 video or 2 videos instead of having to recreate the whole course, right? So very easy to keep up to date today versus the way it was done in the past.
I just wanted to mention one of the things that happens for us to be able to figure out all these Keepa things and ways to use Keepa is that our conversations are often around ASINs, believe it or not. Everything's an ASIN to us. And we are often talking about, gosh, if I could have a way to find the ASINs that are such and such, I think there might be something there I'd like to test. And we always ask ourselves, how do we find that in Keepa? And that's when we go into the product finder or usually the product finder and see if we can put a combination of filters together. And we always encourage people to, when you're asking those questions, think, how would I find those in Keepa?
Yep. Or how do I do that in Keepa?
How do I do that in Keepa? Right. Which is what Jim has done.
Yes.
Which might bring us to the next.
Well, one more thing I want to cover that is in this Keepa course is a section called Keepa Plus, which is how you can leverage Keepa plus some of the other tools that we already know and are familiar with in the community, including tactical arbitrage, Nepeto, replan dashboard, 3P Mercury. These are the kind of tools that like you can using Keepa by itself is super powerful. Now, when you can take that data and leverage it with other third-party tools, you can get really good at this stuff.
Yeah, I made a video. I posted in the Facebook group. It's just an example of what you just talked about, where one of the things that Nepeto did is they'll take that, you find all of the different sellers and all their ASINs, and you comb through them and you come up with a list of potential winners. You can upload that list in Nepeto and it will say, hey, here's where you can buy these items. And here's potentially the most profitable ones right at the top. Like it does the heavy lifting for you right out of the gate. And now, arguably, it's throwing out 90% of the ones worth researching further, but it's finding the cream of the crop. It's like, boom, instantly. I was very impressed. Made a video, stuck it in the Facebook group. I'll stick a link in the show notes to that video, actually, as an example of what you're talking about. Because when you start massaging this data or mining the data through these third-party tools, it can save you so much time. And it's just such a great feeling like, okay, wow, of that 5,000 ASINs that I just pulled, here's the 4 or 5 that are probably the biggest winners. And it took me 45 seconds instead of sorting and scanning. And right. So you hand those kind of processes over to maybe a virtual assistant. And now you just, your ability to pan gold, you're panning it. The visual I just had at the top of my mind. I know you guys like the visuals. Like, it's one thing to pan gold in a stream that has some potential. It's another thing to have a way bigger pan and a way bigger stream. And now we got multiple streams and multiple pans operating, and these tools are automated while I'm sleeping. They're working. Like, those are the different stages you kind of go through in this ASIN hunting adventure. And you guys are going to help us do that.
One of the things that I think I've been late to the party on. I've always believed it, and I've always practiced it, but I haven't always preached it. And that is about the BI or the business intelligence that you get the longer that you're in this business. Yes. And tools like tactical arbitrage and Nepeto, where historically I'm like, oh no, thanks, right? I don't need.
I got Keepa. I'm good.
Not that I want the source, right? I want to be as close to the source of truth as I can get. But one of the real advantages that those two tools specifically offer is helping you get that last mile done. And the last mile is what Rob and Joy and I call bridging the gap, which is where you are validating an ASIN and then finding a reliable source with it. And when you put those two things together, you've bridged the gap. Well, tactical arbitrage and Nepeto, that's what they're built for. They find the source for the ASIN. So you still have to do the homework to make sure that both of those are good, but that's like money in the bank. And so even if it isn't profitable today, log that thing. Testable, sorry, yes. As long as it's viable, log that thing in a database so that you've always got it. And then tools like 3P Mercury and Replan Dashboard, they help you. When you go in there, you can just run a search and it'll basically make your shopping list for you every week. Super easy.
Yeah, we're really dialing this in.
Yeah.
I feel like we've helped mature this. I feel like Amazon owes us a bonus check, to be honest, because, I had a conversation, the highest ranking member of Amazon I ever talked to is a senior VP, a guy that reports to Bezos. And one of the things he said to me at the time, this has been several years ago, was, man, you guys are so good at filling our shelves. Why would we ever want to do it ourselves? Right? Well, we've gotten better at it, and we're still 35% or so of the activity all day, every day. Like Amazon doesn't want excess inventory sitting in their warehouses. Neither do we. Nobody wins. So what are the hot things that are underserved? Where's that underserved shelf space? A term that Amazon should have come up with themselves, but they didn't. We did. Like, how do you find it? How do you serve it with excellence? That's what we do. And we're dialing in with the tools and the processes. Like, we're doing some heavy lifting for Amazon, creating a bunch of success stories in our community, obviously, and that's a benefit. But hey, Amazon, how about a bonus check, man? Because really, this is stuff that they should be teaching. But we're kind of picking up the slack there. So maybe I'm calling out Keepa today. I'm calling out Amazon today. I don't know. I'm gonna be taking off some Christmas lists here. I think I'm not careful, but yeah, I love going on this journey with you guys. We geek out about it, and I find myself spinning and waking up in the middle of the night sometimes going, oh, wait, I could filter this way. If I have this feature, right, I can't turn it off.
Well, why don't you jump into the revolutionary approach here? That is
absolutely. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Just feel like in this community, we are in the place to be right now. There are revolutionary things happening that have never happened before and nobody else is doing. And one of the great examples of that is what Jim identified as above the buy box selling. And he has shared with us how he does that all day, every day. And he shares those Keepa charts and tells us where the buy box is and where he's selling. And we are leaving money on the table. So, of course, everything that we train is to test it as high as you can test it. It may not sell there, but why not see if you can sell it there? We don't want to go deep on anything anyway, so let's get the most we can if we're only going to sell a few on each ASIN.
That's right.
So one of my favorites, as long as we're talking about our favorite filters in the product finder.
Sure.
Favorites.
Everything's your favorite.
Yeah.
The back-ordered filter will tell you when there are ASINs, they have opportunity available, stock coming in, inventory coming in. That's the word I was looking for, inventory coming in, but it's not quite there yet. So you can't get it within the 48-hour, what we call the prime window, right? So I want those because a lot of those are going to be selling so fast that we can't even keep stock in them. So that's one of my favorite ways.
Oh, yeah. I do very little of that, but I'm just sitting here in my mind already. I'm thinking, okay, it's back ordered. It drops more than, say, 30 times a month, just pulling a random number, higher the better, the more likely it is to be winner. Send in a few FBA units at a high price. Odds are those are going to smoke off the shelf.
That's right.
Right? Done. That's one of, we could sit here and brainstorm 500 examples between the three of us, and you add a few more leaders and we got 1,000 examples, right? Yeah. So people are like, how do I use Keepa? Like, there's so many different ways. We just gave you one. That's a layup. That's a 7-figure business just doing what we just described over and over again on repeat.
Exactly.
Well, and this is what I was going to say when you said, are you guys selling anything above the buy box? Initially, the very first time you mentioned it, and Rob and I looked at each other and we're like, what are you selling above the buy box? We're all about the repricer, and we still, like, we left money on the table because we are hyper focused on inch deep and mile wide. So it's not unusual for us to run out of stock on items. And that's totally fine with us, as opposed to getting caught with a whole bunch
Fine with me too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But since we started testing that out and the results have come to fruition in our business, and we shared this with you a few months ago, our business has changed. The Replen side of our business has changed a lot. So like our top line revenue is down double digits, but our net profit is up double digits.
Right.
So we're handling fewer units. We're, technically we have, lower sales volume and velocity, but our profits are better. And isn't that what you want in a business? Less work and more money?
Yeah. Well, it's popping in my head for the first time ever, but it sounded to me like you were describing that, what's the Japanese Kaizen, continuous improvement, just-in-time delivery, right? We love just-in-time education around here. How about a just-in-time replens business? Meaning, I'm not going to buy 5,000 units of anything and hope it works out over the next 6 months. Some people have built beautiful businesses doing that. That's not what I want to do. I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of businesses rolling.
Yeah.
I don't want to be 5,000 units deep in anything. Now, there's sellers in our community that do that, and they're doing well. But this is a beautiful model that eliminates all of the potential risks, the risk today and the risks tomorrow. It eliminates so much of the risk, and we're left with a worst case break-even scenario. And it's very newbie friendly too, what you were describing right now. I mean, just yesterday's podcast episode was a young man who came in our coaching program a few weeks ago. It's a kid from church. I didn't know if to take him seriously or not. He just came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to do Amazon." I'm like, "All right, read my book. Go away." Right? That's what I do to everybody. Most people just go away and never come back. He read it, loved it, without me even realizing it, jumped into the coaching program. A few weeks later, he's having $1,000 sales days selling as and this blows me away. As much as I'd like to think that the three of us are kind of at the cutting edge of the creative uses of the strategies we're talking about right here, I never would have done what this guy did. But he went and found the Nason that had 200 other sellers on it. And you're thinking, there's no opportunity there. End of story. I could care less what else the story is. 200 sellers, there is nothing there for anyone. No, he jumped on as the highest price seller of all 200 and sold 2,400 units in a few days. Why? Because it was underserved. Identified it through the Keepa strategies we'd trained him.
Exactly.
There weren't enough units in Amazon's hundreds of warehouses. What I've been fond of saying, guys, this is my new catchphrase. Okay, like if this is the tweetable quote from this episode. Today, millions of shoppers on Amazon will pay significantly less than they were willing to for slower delivery than they wanted.
Yep. Absolutely. I like it.
That is a massive opportunity for those of us who recognize the power of what I just said.
Well, as soon as Amazon puts a filter on their product search by, like when you're on an ASIN, by delivery date, fastest delivery date, that's going to totally change the game too. Like they have the Prime only like filter that you can set, but you're leaving out products that don't have a buy box potentially. A lot of different things get left behind in there, but as soon as they put that in place, we're going to sell a lot more stuff.
Filter by date. We'll sell more, they'll sell more, customers will be happier. That's one change. Hey, Mr. Amazon, if you're listening, people in charge, put a search filter on there. If there's a bunch of sellers, which one can get it to me the fastest? Let me search easily for that. Don't let me scroll through all the dates.
Right. Yeah.
Put that on there.
Different for every one of us in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. There's going to be a different person that's available sooner, a different seller, because of where their stock is in a warehouse. So that's this, recognizing these things, this is what I'm saying. Some of these thoughts are revolutionary, just like Replens was a few years ago, revolutionary thoughts. And it took a while to catch on, but then people started doing it. And this community said, oh yeah, we've been doing that for years. This is going to be the same kind of thing, I think.
So have you guys built some of the out of stock above buy box strategies, I should say, into the new Keepa 360? Do you spend some time on that?
So yeah, there's we have a couple of different actual strategies that we have built included in there. There's a couple in there that are like for your Amazon to Amazon flips, for your Amazon out of stock, for your, in fact, I was just fooling around with one this morning. we talked about the creativity that is in the community. I was watching somebody else use Keepa and it sparked an idea. I was like, oh, I never even thought about it that way.
Happens all the time.
And so I made a search today that was like Amazon out of stock, no third-party FBA, at least one FBM offer, not hazmat, not meltable, right? And then pick my subcategory. And all of a sudden I have all these opportunities of ASINs that move quickly and there's just no FBA on them. None.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of those people
Gold.
Yes, gold. Yeah, it's gold.
a lot of those, as well as the ones who are back ordered, because Amazon takes the buy box away sometimes when it's not available within 48 hours. People are walking away from those because they don't have a buy box.
Mhm.
We are past having to worry about what the buy box and the other sellers are doing. And if you're missing that, there are many other strategies that work too that include the buy box, but this strategy works and we need to include it in our businesses.
I think we almost need a second mug, Robert. You guys have, find more ASINs, right? Keep calm and find more. I think
test above
ignore the buy box.
Or the buy box.
Ignore the buy box.
That's a good idea, Jim.
Because there's so much content out there that's like, here's how to win the buy box. Here's how to get in the buy box. When will the buy box finally rotate to me? And I'm like, no, get above it and serve those ASINs where you can make steady sales without ever worrying about the buy box becomes your worst case scenario, basically 6 weeks from now, or depending on how you
exactly right.
Well, and here's what I tell people when they're getting started. Testing an ASIN, when you're building a foundation, you don't have a whole lot of balance. So you want to make sure that you're getting a sale, so something that's moving fast, but you want to make sure that, you're protecting your capital too. And I'm getting into a little bit about, our 3-step check, but just lost my train of thought. How do I do that?
That was good.
That was good.
What you tell the new people.
What I tell the new people is don't be afraid to try it. You won't know if it's going to sell up there. We don't have any evidence to tell us if it's going to sell.
Right.
But if we test it, we can find out. And we'll get a sale even if we didn't make any money. And what Amazon needs to see in the beginning is a sale.
Transactions. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yep. And that's what gets those restrictions.
That's one of the ways we know we're dealing with a new seller who doesn't really quite get it yet. Is Brian, you actually made the little slip of the tongue and Robert Joy corrected you about 20 minutes ago. You said, well, is it profitable? Let's find out if you don't know. We don't know if it's profitable or not till a sale occurs.
Yep.
We decide how much profit we want with the price we set.
Yeah.
Knowing our worst case scenario might be we have to drop it down into that busy buy box range and move our inventory.
Sure.
Right? But start it high. I'm blown away with the examples. Just in my own account, I've shared 250 examples of ASINs that have sold way above buy box because I found underserved ASINs.
Yep.
There's all kinds of different ways to identify them. And I'm pretty sure we haven't even started to discover all the different ways.
Right.
There's so much. That warehouse near me, I'm pointing at it. It's right over there. It's about 5 miles away. If someone's in a hurry and lives in my area, that's the only warehouse they're shopping today.
Yeah.
No one else can get it there in 2 to 4 hours.
Right.
So in that warehouse, how many underserved ASINs are there? The really popular stuff that there's no FBA sellers with units sitting there. So the shopper is going to pay less than they were willing to for slower delivery than they were hoping for. Millions of ASINs meet that description right now.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned was or maybe you didn't mention it, but it's on my mind. I took a note. Well, you're talking about the Kaizen when that came up.
Yeah. Continuous improvement.
Yep. Is what I like to call the continual operational improvement. Yeah. And this speaks to our top line is down double digits, but our profit is up double digits.
Right.
That's because of just small improvements. And we're constantly testing these things all the time. I guess that implies constantly, but you see where I'm going with this. Like we don't just, if you're stopped, you're losing ground. So we're constantly on the path of trying to make improvements. And I'm guessing you were too, which is how you first shared the above the buy box strategy with us, is you're like, how do I squeeze more profit out of kind of what I'm already doing?
Absolutely.
And that presented itself to you.
Process improvement. I don't know if it's probably been years since I shared this on the podcast, but one of my, I didn't have many college classes that I really enjoyed or professors that I loved, but one of them was Dr. Franklin. Hello, if you're listening. He turned me on to Deming and Duran, heroes of that whole Six Sigma movement that, it first took off in Japan. There's statues of Edward Deming in Japan. Like this guy Toyota wouldn't exist. Sony wouldn't exist. They wouldn't listen to him in the US, so he went there. And the simple concept is, I'm a statistics nerd a bit, but the simple concept is if you can track a process, you can improve it and make tiny incremental challenges or improvements to a process. And there's always a way to improve just a little bit more. So you're constantly making these little tweaks. So with less effort, you're producing more results. It's basically leverage. It's the concept of leverage applied to businesses, constantly improving the lever, constantly moving that pivot point closer to where the effort is so you can lift more, right? It's just a simple concept. If you can keep that visual, and that is where it came from, this looking over the sales and the numbers. And I just noticed I just said, hey, start our prices high. And I was shocked how often it would sell at a high price. Those crazy sellers that are charging so much more than everyone else. We're like, yeah, that guy's never going to make a sale. Well, come to find out they are making sales.
Yeah.
Why? Let's dial in to figure out why people are paying $20, $30, $50 more than they need to, or that they had to, right? Because of speed. That's the only logical explanation that's on the table, is because of speed. Okay, so where are all these shoppers who want all this speed? How do we find them and get products in front of them? And we're dialing in on that. And like you said, Rob and Joy, no one else is doing this. We're at this point 2.5 years or so ahead of the curve.
I think so.
And it's the flip the script that I think is so important that Robin talks about. Instead of focusing on what do I have to buy it for? Focus on.
Right. So when there's a buy box, historically, we have said, okay, here's what it's selling for, even though that's the moment in the place where we happen to be looking at it, which could be completely different for someone.
Just our zip code, right?
Yeah. We look at that and we buy that as that's the only thing that anyone in the world is seeing, and that's the only thing they will buy. But since we know this, and then we go and we look and see, can we find something that we can buy for low enough to make that number profitable for me? What we can do now is go find out what the item costs. I mean, it costs what it costs. You can look for hours and probably not find it for much better price, significantly better price, spend a lot of time, and you still have what it's going to cost. That's the number we can't control. What we can control is what we sell it for. So I'm going to test it at what I need it to be. If it doesn't sell there, I'm not going to replenish it. If it does sell there, I'm going to replenish it there. Yeah. Why wouldn't I? I can't. Right. So just turned it upside down. And I think that's working so well for a lot of people. Brian says, and I texted you the other night, I thought this was great. He said, I'd rather find an ASIN that sells 200 times and sell 6 for the price I want, and go find 200 of those ASINs, rather than sell on one ASIN 200 items at a price that's not profitable, or not as profitable as it could be for me.
It's the inch deep, mile wide.
Yep. That's
minimizing your risks, knowing that tomorrow somebody could go buy. This is a good, safe way to think about Amazon, to say what you just said, Rob and Joy, a slightly different way. Just keep in mind, as a reseller, anything you're selling right now, somebody could conceivably go spend $100,000 on that product tomorrow and get them at a ridiculous discount and send them in as FBA.
Yep,
that's right.
Shop accordingly.
Yep.
Right. So let's just go super narrow, and we can get I'd rather just have to get rid of 3 or 4 units than have to get rid of 500 units.
Yeah.
At a fire sale. Right? So that's the opportunity.
And what this is doing for you is allowing you to get in here and build your toolkit of e-com. So maybe you're not an e-commerce seller. Maybe you haven't done, this is your first entrepreneurial adventure. You're getting in here, you're learning the system with low risk.
Yeah.
Tell me if you've heard this before.
Yeah.
Low investment and a high chance for success, right? And what I love about Keepa is it allows you to turn it upside down very easily. So instead of focusing on one thing, flip it and focus on the exact opposite of that. And
so when you have control over
the things that you do have control over. And so I frequently equate it to like the negative of a photograph, which I know we don't really have negatives anymore, but in the old days we had film and you would take pictures and then you would actually get the negative. That was the actual source of truth, not the photograph. Mm-hmm. But the negative was the opposite color configuration of what was in the photograph. So what we can actually do that in Keepa, whatever you think is the going strategy, you can actually flip that and go in the negative direction or the opposite direction and get a whole different set of ASINs to review.
Right. And the way we recognize people who haven't done that yet, I think the easiest way for us to recognize it as leaders in this community is when people say, I can't find profitable products. It's like, oh, stop.
Yep.
You need to go look for underserved shelf space instead, mister.
Right.
You need to go find test-worthy ASINs instead. You need to understand what that means. And then the world opens up and you're seeing that you're going around the other side and seeing the world from the other side instead of looking for cheap stuff that I can flip. Right. Looking for eager customers who are spending more than they probably should. And they're thrilled to do it because they got fast delivery. And like our example before, I mean, to me, this should leave people awake at night going, how in the world did this happen? And until this makes sense in your head that this happens all the time, you don't get it. So we have a new student in our community that sold 2,400 units as the highest priced seller on a popular ASIN with 200 other sellers. Until you can give me a rational explanation for why that happened, and it makes sense to you, you don't get it. You just don't get it yet. But that happens all day, every day. 200 competitors, and I'm the highest price. Typically, you'd expect that person to have just wasted a bunch of time and have to recall all this stuff back to their garage. No, he's selling it like crazy as the highest price seller. Why? Because people wanted it fast. And he was the fast option. He was one of a handful of FBA sellers that had actually had a lot of inventory.
Now, I hope while all those were selling, he was finding new ASINs.
I told him that. Don't rely on that one. He actually, it's podcast episode 890. He shares the exact product and everything. You'll hear it for yourself. And just I love when new students come in and just very matter of factly say, yeah, I did this like you guys said. I did that like you said. And when I asked him how many other sellers there were, it was one of the last questions I asked him. And he said 200. I've never been that bold. I've jumped on ASINs with 50 other sellers and 60 maybe as a 200. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure anymore. I've seen it happen now.
But now it's like, I'm just saying previously, like it just expanded the horizon even broader. Here's a search filter for you. How many total sellers are on an ASIN? If it's a lot of people, jump on it with a high price. Done. That's a winning strategy.
Well, yeah, especially if you're protecting your capital and, no guarantees, but evidence is the worst case that's going to happen is you're going to get a sale and make Amazon really happy, and you didn't make any money, you didn't lose any money, and you get the experience.
Break even is your worst case. Hop on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, which is why I brought that thing up 1 second ago. Sorry, Jim.
Go ahead.
The starting the replens business builds your toolkit for you so that you can go do whatever else it is that you want to do. And we had this great analogy or story that we were reading the other day about the adoption of technology, right? How long did it take phones to reach 10 million people?
Yes.
It took 40 years.
Quite a while. Yeah.
40 years to get 10 million customers because they had to build all the infrastructure. Once the infrastructure was there, then that allowed that was like what we call the information superhighway today, right?
And how
many years did it take email to reach 10 million people?
In 1 year.
Wow.
1 year. So with the replens business, you're basically laying the phone lines, right?
Yeah.
And building the experience.
Good analogy. Yeah.
So that your next business, whether that's a private label venture, whether that's PPP, you've already got all the skills and the tools.
Yes.
And boom, now you're doing from the 40-year to the 1 year thing.
Yes,
beautiful.
Some technology.
Your understanding of the basic business skills. You've taken a very low risk on ramp into this territory. The relationships that you now have, which is a huge, I think, underappreciated factor here. The people in this community, your understanding of the technology, that you can go up to any brand out there and say, hey, I know how Amazon works, and they're going to just basically throw money at you and say, please help us because it's just freaking us out, right? Just opportunity everywhere. But this gentle on-ramp that we've created that eliminates risk and to the greatest degree possible, right? All business will always be risk. But yeah, I love it. That's a great analogy. You're laying down the ground, the foundational network that you can then build multiple different opportunities. And you hear that on our podcast all the time. People who started here and went on to do X, Y, and Z in addition to, in some cases, abandoning the original model, in some cases, keeping it rocking with, why not automate it, systemize it, put some good people in charge. Multiple streams of income are possible, right?
That's it.
Wonderful. Well, guys, we could nerd out all day
Oh yeah,
on
we
this
could.
stuff. I really, we've got a mass audience, a broad range, I should say, of different listeners. This may be the first episode someone heard today. This may be someone who's listened to all 890 plus episodes. Who knows? But in any case, I want to leave a little bit of something for everyone. So let's all have like a final take comment. And maybe ladies first. Rob and Joy, if you got anything that's on your mind to wrap this one up, let's make sure to remind people to go to silentjim.com/360. It's launched. If you're a proven Amazon course or coaching student, look for an email that's going to have some details on a great discount for you. But let's start to land this plane. What final thoughts do you guys have as we wrap this one up today?
So I want to say that it is amazing to me how many people are coming into this community. And this podcast, like you said, if you haven't heard it before, go listen to some, because this is what inspired us, what made us come to this community. There are success stories happening every day in this community. It is not done. It is not over. And we're working in a situation where it does take human eyeballs, and we do get benefit for our hard work. Those of us don't have the dollar money, but we got hard work. We get to win in this, and the big guys can't take over because it takes human eyeballs. So give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. That was something I was going to bring up earlier, is the opportunity is still here for everyone, because it does take human eyeballs to verify, validate, and create a viable ASIN for you to potentially test. Like there's no there's a little bit of automation in place. Most of it historically hasn't been great, but you can't rely on automation alone. You need to have visual oversight, whether that's you or someone on your team. That's kind of the long pole in the tent. And that's why this opportunity is available for everyone still. But what I would like to say, Jim, just to kind of summarize everything, this is this new Keepa module isn't just about some strategies that, like, here, put this search in and then go research these ASINs. This really is a comprehensive view of Keepa with multiple tracks to meet you where you are. Because a lot of times people are like, hey, I just got my Amazon account yesterday and I'm signing up for Keepa right now. How do I do that advanced Keepa sourcing?
Mhm.
Right? It's like probably right over their head. So we've got a great multiple tracks to get them through, meet them where they are, and then you can progress as you gain experience.
Beginner, intermediate, and advanced is how we kind of summarized it before we hit record today, I think, right? So yeah, we've got a little bit of something for everyone. And there's no such thing. Another tell that I know I'm dealing with someone who isn't quite there yet is they say, yeah, I understand Keepa. And I'm like, you do? Well, I've been studying it for 7 years, and I feel like I'm a kid in a candy store every other day. Like, whoa, I didn't know it did that. Like, and you watched a few YouTube videos, I'm guessing, right? And you've learned about the buy box. Yeah, no, you don't understand Keepa yet. So yeah, you guys have done a tremendous job. And I think my parting comment will just be, what a pleasure it is to have, a team of, there's a separate Facebook group. A lot of people don't know this. The leadership team of this community. There's over 100 of us in that group. And these are the coaches, the content creators, the coaching team leaders, the moderators, the support people, right? I'm probably leaving out a few, just the people who put their heart and soul into this community and who just their heart rate races when they see success stories, because that's what it's all about for us. It's just such a pleasure to work with that group, and specifically you guys as some of the leading content creators, to great coaching team leaders. You've done the workshops with us. Just a pleasure to work with you guys. And, this beats having a real job for me any day. Getting to do this, man. Are you kidding me? It's just so much fun. Changing lives, and let's just keep serving and hitting it. And one last time, silentjim.com/360. Go check out Brian and Robin Joy's latest work, and you will be far better for it. Not sure what the price point is. It's all on the page, but it's going to be worth 100 times whatever we're charging, I'm sure, just like everything else we do here. So yeah, really, appreciate you guys.
Very grateful to be on the team, to have the ability, to come on and share, work with so many people that we do in the coaching program, be a part of the leadership team, get to spend some time with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Well, we'll do it again soon. I'm sure there's always more work to do. So have a great weekend, you guys. And for the listeners who are hanging out with us today, I don't know when you're listening to this, but you should know this. Brian alluded to this earlier a little bit. We've got hundreds of these episodes where it's not just the team talking. We're talking to students who are doing it. And if you want to hear those success stories, just scroll back in time. We're the only podcast in e-commerce, to our knowledge, that's done hundreds of interviews with the students studying the content from the podcast and succeeding with that content. That's pretty cool. So scroll back and hear some of those episodes. Brian, Robin, Joy, till we meet again, my friends, thank you so much. And to all the business building warriors out there, we'll have another great episode for you very soon. Thanks for listening. Talk to you then.